Well, good morning, everyone. We are back today with our Move Daily Nutrition coach, Kim Hogarth, and we've been on a few times together. I love our conversations. We try to debunk some fitness, nutrition, wellness myths that are out there. I know there's a lot going on social media these days, and so sometimes it's challenging to know what to believe. Well, we are bringing some science back ideas to you today, so I hope that you enjoy this episode. Kim, welcome back to the podcast.
I'm so pleased to be here, Tracy. Lovely to see you and everyone again.
Yes, absolutely. You've done a big move across your country lately. Tell us about where you moved from and where you moved to, because I think our listeners would be interested.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, officially one of the most stressful things I think I've ever done, despite being worth it.
Totally.
But yeah, we've moved from southern England to Scotland. Now, geographically, for most of our listeners, that feels like a tiny distance. But in England, that's about 9 hours difference in driving time because our roads are not straight, which is lovely. But we now live pretty much in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nature and trees. And I am thrilled that I can now move daily outside and take my work outside,
Yeah.
and just really benefit from a whole different pace of life. So joyous, but yeah, tricky to do with three children.
Well, they say there's a few things in life that are like one of the biggest stressors, and of course, moving is one of those. So, yeah, no doubt. No doubt
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
stressful.
Never again.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know we say that, and yet life happens, and sometimes. But
Hmm.
I know we were looking it up on a map, and you are like northern, uh, west or northwest Scotland, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we're pretty much right on the far side and almost hemmed off. So there's only one sort of way you can get into mainland Scotland from where we are. Hence, it feels like it's almost a little island all by itself and a little bit cut off. But it's yeah. The only problem is the nearest store is an hour away. Now with three children, that's an interesting challenge. But I'm learning to meal prep like there's no tomorrow, so it's good.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Yeah, it's not like you can just run out for one ingredient. You have to really be prepared.
For sure.
Absolutely. Well, today we're going to bust some myths, like I said in the intro there. We're going to talk about some topics that are really popular right now that people ask us a lot of questions about within our membership and over in our Move Daily Hustle Facebook group. By the way, that is a free group. We invite you to join. If you're listening, maybe you're not a part of a group. It's lovely because I mean it's predominantly women. There's some men in there too, but uh, people pose questions that you probably have, right? And so Kim and I are in there answering those questions, and other participants answer a lot too. And we find it such a great community. Hey, Kim?
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's nearly 30,000 movers now, which is
Yeah.
astonishing. I remember when we first started and it was a much smaller group. And you're right. I think the camaraderie of the women in there, just the shared experiences. I've never seen a question asked that wasn't answered by someone. And I
Yeah.
think that's great just for our feeling of, yeah, just feeling like we're one with the community and the movers.
Yeah, so many ideas, what people are doing for their workouts, how they're moving through menopause, what they're using for supplements, what they're doing for joint pain. We're talking about all of that over there. So be sure to join. Again, it's called Move Daily Hustle over in Facebook. All right, what are we starting with today, Kim?
So our first myth, which is, oh, I love this one, is that eating after 6 p.m. at night automatically leads to weight gain. Gosh, such controversial one, this one. And yeah, really keen to get into this.
I mean, automatically is if you're eating too many calories, I guess then automatically it might lead to weight gain, right? But everyone is different. Some people are shift workers. Some people, go to bed really late. So this we have to visit some of the nuance around it. Personally, I guess you can speak from your own experience. What works for you, right? And for me, I have found that if I eat dinner and then I close the kitchen after, like mentally, I put up a kitchen is closed sign. It's super helpful for me to say, okay, I'm not going to snack after because sometimes that snacking can be mindless. It can lead to an addition of a lot of calories after your meal, even if you're not really thinking about it. And so I put up this closed kitchen. I brush and floss my teeth, which I think is such a great tip because who wants to floss twice, right? You're really not prone to eat again once your teeth are brushed. And then you can just go right into bedtime. For me, it's helpful because I don't want to go to bed feeling full, right? I like that rest and digest. I like going to bed with a stomach that's not full. And it's just helpful if I have that mindset not to eat those additional calories. But that is certainly not the case for everyone. And really, what we're talking about here is how many calories are you getting in your 24-hour period, like in your day? And if you are on a weight loss journey or in a fat loss phase, if you're in your calorie deficit, it doesn't matter too much when you're eating those calories. What do you think, Kim?
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, much of the research shows that it's the causation of it. So, in other words, we tend to eat more at night if we are stressed, we've had a long day, we might be tired, perhaps we're spending time with our partner or our family or friends. We tend to get more emotional in the evening as well. So actually, it's not so much eating after 6 p.m., so to speak. It's the fact that as human beings, we tend to quote unquote overeat in the evening time. And that's really more what it's about. And I must say, I'm the opposite. So I will have quite a small dinner because I will have a very small snack like some rice cakes or something really light with some nut butter before bed because I train fasted really early in the morning. And if I don't do that, I find I am quite hungry as soon as I wake up. So I think what you started with adapting it to fit with your life, but having that level of control, I could quite easily not, but then I'd get really hungry in the morning. Probably my breakfast then wouldn't be as good. So it's realizing what works for you in your routine, I think, is the ideal, and not getting stuck on this thing that anything after 6 p.m. automatically means gaining more weight. But I do also just want to touch on your rest and digest, because I think it's one of the most vital things, of course, we know is sleep for our health. And actually, if we do eat quite a lot of food towards our bedtime, there is a huge danger our bodies are like busy digesting all night. And actually, that means we're not going to get that really deep sleep that our bodies need. So that's another thing to consider.
And oftentimes people will in the evening start to relax. And one of the things they might do is, grab a drink, a glass of wine, and they have said, that helps me relax. And no doubt it does, because alcohol is a sedative, right? So it sedates us and makes us feel all woozy and perhaps we think ready for sleep. But as Dr. Matt Walker does talk about with alcohol, any amount, right, is not going to allow us to have that deep restorative sleep. As if as opposed to if we didn't have it. We keep that in mind as well, right? Depends on what your targets are. What are your goals for yourself? If your goals are for fat loss, I had Dr. Bill Campbell on, and we know that sleep is critical to that process of fat loss and how much it can hinder fat loss progress if you don't get adequate sleep amount. So then we sort of go back. If we know that alcohol hinders our sleep and sleep hinders, lack of sleep hinders our fat loss progress, then you have to take all of that into account and say, well, what's my goal for myself? If it's to lose body fat, probably drinking in the evening paired with eating in the evening is maybe not the best situation for someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, it's almost looking at the root cause of what may be delaying your progress and your goals. Is it sleep? Is it the odd glass of wine? Is it the fact that when you do have a glass of wine, you're extra tired, then most of us get a little bit of the munchies and we get a little bit hungry. Maybe those chips look even more attractive. And all of a sudden, we've been in that more mindless space of snacking and eating later at night. And the other thing to remember as well is that in the evening, of course, we're generally not busy. In the day, we might have grandchildren to look after, we might be working. Comes to the evening, we're often just sat in a lounge room,
Yeah.
chilling out,
Yeah.
relaxing, like, oh, well, what's in the cupboard? I'm just going to go and wander in the kitchen. So I think
Yeah.
your idea about closing that down, having a
Yeah.
routine is ideal. And it doesn't mean never, but I think being really conscious about when you choose to perhaps have something that's more indulgent is where we're trying to get to. It's that mindfulness around when you eat and what you're eating. And do you really want it?
Yeah, exactly. Asking yourself those questions is great. All right, excellent. We covered that, I think. What's next?
Right. Next, we have, now I know we've been asked this one so many times, you can spot reduce body fat
We have been asked that.
many
And
times.
then what do we say to those people? No, so when you think about some of those trouble spots, there's lots of areas that we tend to accumulate, larger fat molecules, or they increase in size, basically. I just actually heard on Dr. Bill Campbell today. He's a fat loss researcher. He just said you have all of the fat cells that you're going to get in your body by the age of 20. So you're not ever going to get more fat cells, and you're never going to lose fat cells. What does happen in terms of fat loss and fat gain is that those cells either increase in size or shrink in size. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't know by the age of 20 we had all of the ones that we have. So yeah, then our fat is going to accumulate, or those cells are going to increase in size or decrease in size in certain areas. And we can't really choose those areas, can we? It's just going to be like where those places are. And so often we'll have that by the armpit, abdominal fat, in the back area, right around the thighs. And a lot of that really is dependent on your body shape. So I had Dr. Kyle Gillette on. We talked all about this. So listen to that podcast if you want to deeper dive into that. But we talked about the apple shape and the pear shape, right? So an apple shape body and will generally accumulate fat more in the torso. So you might see a larger percentage of adipose tissue around the belly. Maybe even perhaps more visceral fat, maybe around the armpits, but your thighs and arms probably are going to be a little bit leaner. So flip the script, and people who are pear shape are probably going to find more fat around their thighs, maybe their arms, the back of their triceps. You can see that shape there. So some of us, most of us rather, tend to be in one of those camps. And so, you think about, can I reduce fat in these specific areas? And what we always tell people is that in general, your body is going to lose fat wherever it does first. You can't really pick and choose. It's going to say, this is where I'm going to do it. And you just have to go with the flow with that. And part of that, going with the flow with that, I think, is this acceptance too of the body that you were born with, right? Like that's so important. I think sometimes we think, oh, I want to be like Sally from The Office, who's really lean and she doesn't have fat here or there. And we think if we just try hard enough, we're going to end up like her. That's just a wrong way of thinking. I would rather us think, let's work with the body that I have. And what does that look like for me? Right? Some people might end up with a leaner ectomorph frame and body, but if that's not you, like trying to get there is a fool's errand. And I think shifting your focus maybe to be something like, how strong can I get? Right? How muscular can I get? Or how much can I work on my balance or agility? How can I improve my VO2 max? These can be different goals for us that feel equally satisfying, but are more suited for our bodies. Like, what do you think about that?
I could not agree more. And I think it's really interesting because, as you know, we get so many questions from the members and from our movers, which is all about the last 5 pounds. How can I lose this last 5 pounds of belly fat, or my thighs, or maybe it's the back of my arms? And I always start the conversation with, well, what about if we find a different goal to maybe focus on? Because that last 5 pounds of trying to spot reduce the fat wherever it's kind of sitting, that last little bit, such hard work. And it's why most of us don't go that far. And I've tried myself. It was a lot of work and I came straight back to where I was, because to maintain it is, and you kind of have to ask yourself, why? Why am I trying to do this? Is it to look like someone on Instagram? Is it to look like I did when I was 25? Or do I just want to be a stronger, fitter, healthier version of what I was last year? That's a great comparator. And as you say, when you get to the kind of the end almost of your fat loss journey, flip the goal. Let's build some muscle. Let's have some body recomposition. That can be so exciting for women. And I think sometimes we lose that because we're always focused on parts of our body that we don't like, and that's the last bit of fat and everything. And as you say, let's build some great biceps. Let's build a great back. Let's just get some amazing definition and stop worrying about the tiny little bit that maybe just goes over your jeans by half an inch and focusing on the wrong thing. So yeah, I think a lot of this is in the attitude to what we think about ourselves, celebrating our bodies for what they can do, and not worrying about what we think we see, I think. But it's hard. It's a mental battle.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There will be some listeners who say, yeah, and I still want to lose that. I still want to lose that. And to you, I would say, if you get lean enough, your trouble spots, the fat in those specific areas will reduce if you get lean enough. And as Kim alluded to, but at what cost? Because it's going to cost you. And maybe if it's not financially, it will cost you, maybe time with friends, maybe eating normally at a function, maybe your sleep, because you're going to need a lot of sleep to repair and restore, maybe extra workouts, so time there. So it will cost in some regard. You always have to weigh the pros and cons. Is that worth it for me? So again, back to the trouble spots, if you get lean enough, again, your body is going to shrink those fat cells wherever it deems first. And for a lot of people, it can be up in your torso and your belly, your face. A lot of people notice fat loss when you haven't seen someone for 3 months and they're on a fat loss journey. You sort of notice where they begin to reduce fat. But depending on your body shape, you're going to carry an excess amount of fat or extra amount of fat there, and that will probably be the last place that you lose. Now, what we can do though is really, back to the workouts, we can really train those trouble spots as well. We can increase muscle in specific areas, which can shape or alter the look of our body in certain capacities, right? So if you want to work on your legs and you increase muscle in your legs, but if you don't lose fat at the same time or after you've built muscle, everything might just look bigger too. So you have to sort of take all those things into account, right? I think a lot of people say, I want to build muscle, but my legs all of a sudden are getting big. They're getting huge. I'm like, that's because you're building muscle, but you haven't reduced body fat percentage. So of course, the same amount of fat is going to be lying on top of that muscle that you've just grown. So yes, now your jeans do feel tighter. So there is a different approach to when you want to train and you don't want the legs to be bigger, but you want the muscle to be strong. We talk about that in our membership, and we give coaching for that in terms of how to approach that. But yeah, it's you have to, again, sort of think, what's the top goal? What am I really looking to do? And then you reverse engineer all of the day-to-day steps, processes, and your daily routine in order to get there.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that it's really worth mentioning, and just for context generally, is that it takes a long time to build lean muscle, especially as women. And I've been particularly working on my triceps because, as many of our movers know, I used to be very overweight when I was much younger. And consequently, I have a lot of loose skin across my body, including the backs of my arms. And I've always been inspired because I know you have great triceps and you have that lovely definition, which I've seen. It's fabulous. And I've been working on mine as well. And it's just, I want to say, a good year and a half has it taken me now to actually really be able to see some good definition there. And as you know, I work out a fair amount. And I think that as well, having patience, giving yourself a bit of grace and time to really be able to notice a difference, because there's no quick fixes, there's no overnight change. It takes dedication, takes patience, is why, as I know, many of our members stay with us for a long time, because we can coach them through the process of having that patience, which can be critical to getting the results you need. But yeah, I think just giving yourself time to really work on those trouble spots, if you wish to, is another big factor.
That is such a great point, Kim. And if you were to take a camera and follow Kim, over the last year and a half on her workouts and see how much she lifts, how frequently she gives the triceps attention, right? How many times per week, how much volume, and we're going to be talking about that in another question coming up. You'd be probably shocked at the amount of time and attention it takes in order to get that adaptation. And like she said, especially as you age, it's not going to be as easy as when we were 20 and 30. So to give yourself that time is so important. And if you don't see any progress in a month and you just quit, well, you'll never see the progress then, right? You have to stay in the pocket. And that it can be a challenge when we don't see immediate results. That said, I always have to remind us that the results that you're seeing internally when you commit time to action is tremendous. Not that you'll see it, but what the body's doing, right? The benefits to moving daily are just absolutely, it's non-negotiable. You have to do it for your health. So I think it's really important to continually remind yourself that maybe you're not doing it only for your physique, but you're doing it for your health and longevity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite funny because obviously with the house move most recently, I've been lifting things and moving things, but all that, the kind of functional living day to day, And I've loved how strong I've been, how I've been able to lift, like when the moving guys have been around, I've been lifting the boxes and moving things. I'm like, do you need a hand? No, I'm fine, I'm great. And
Yeah.
it is lovely to be able to feel empowered by what we do. And if I didn't have that consistency of my movement, if I didn't lift as you do so frequently, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd have to sit back and watch other people do things for me. And that is such a life lesson. You know, we want to get to our 80s, 90s, hopefully, and not have to watch other people do things for us. We want to be doing it ourselves. And again, it all speaks to that, and have that longevity and lifespan.
Amen to that. All right, what do we got next?
Brilliant. Okay, so on to our final question. And this is a nice kind of double question. So we'll cover a couple of topics here. Broadly, if you don't lift heavy, you cannot build any muscle. And we're going to bring into this kind of the concept of anabolic resistance as well. And now, I know many of our movers will have heard of anabolic resistance, but I'm just going to read a very short definition to help anybody who's not sure about what it is. So anabolic is a word that we use to define growth. Anabolic, we're growing muscle. So when we talk about anabolic resistance, it's a reduction in the ability of the body, particularly muscle, to be able to respond to the stimulus like protein intake, like lifting, etc., which means that we're not able to grow and develop our muscles as much as we might particularly want to. So that's really what anabolic resistance means. Our body is not responding in perhaps the way we would expect to do when it comes to being able to build that lean muscle. But yes, the lifting heavy and not being able to build muscle, Tracy, and that's when you get asked a lot, especially when women are new to lifting and they can't lift heavy yet. So I know, can you share your experience maybe on how you would coach women with that?
Well, that really is the narrative going around right now on social. So it can be confusing. It's like lift heavy. And I have also given that narrative. So if you're going, well, you've said that too, Tracy. And so I'm learning as well. You know, yeah, a couple of years ago, I think we started to hear this, like especially as you're in menopause, you need to lift heavier, lift heavier, lift heavier. And part of that is true in the sense that as you age, in order to get an adaptation that we had in our 20s and 30s, you need to progressively overload the muscle. So if you're new to lifting, that's going to be very light weights. But if you're seasoned, like Kim and I, you have to, it's going to be heavier weights in order to get any adaptation, right? Because your muscles get used to the weight and then we can plateau. If you don't want that, then you need to progressively overload. So continue to load the muscle up. One of the ways that I like to think about anabolic resistance is, and I didn't bring any visuals, I should have, but as a sponge. I told my friend this analogy the other day, and she's like, "Oh, great, I'm a crusty old sponge." I'm like, basically, basically.
I think
But
we're all crusty and old at some point, aren't we?
I know. When we're younger, think about a sponge that's brand new. It's very malleable. It's very absorbable. Like it absorbs water nicely, right? It's flexible. It really adapts to like picking up water. If water is on the counter, it will pick it up readily. And that's what happens when we're in our 20s and 30s in terms of our ability to use protein and resistance training in order to grow. So those are the two stimulus, and we respond to it very well. Now, as we age, we know that we begin to lose muscle in that fourth decade. So it's starting to slow down our ability to grow muscle. It doesn't ever go away, but it does definitely go on that downward trajectory. So think of it then like, yes, a crusty old sponge, an old dry sponge. So if I put that on the counter right away, it wouldn't absorb anything, would it? Like I'd have to really work it into the water to try and absorb that water. And eventually it would. Think of that analogy in terms of our bodies then. Yes, we are sort of like that crusty old sponge. It does take more stimulus. So again, a little bit higher levels of protein and a different approach to resistance training in order to get the same adaptation we did in our 20s and 30s. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. But it just means that we need to take a little bit of a closer look. Now, can you build muscle with lighter weights? Yes, of course you can. And if you don't believe me, listen to Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, Dr. Stuart Phillips. They talk about this a lot, that the weight amount doesn't matter as much as the effort and the volume. So effort and volume are really key here, which means whoever you are, wherever you're starting, you need to be challenging the muscles. You need to be bringing that effort. And I know Stu Phillips talks about it being, when you come to resistance training, think about training at an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 on a rate of perceived exertion. So that's good to think of. Like, did I really bring my A game? Was I able to bring it 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 in this lifting session? And if you did that, you could probably feel some good fatigue in the muscles, and they're probably being overloaded. Another way to work that through too is thinking about that reps in reserve concept. So say you did a workout and there's 3 sets of bicep exercises. In the first round, you want to think about maybe leaving 3 to 4 reps left in the tank or on the table. So you're lifting a 12-pound dumbbell, and I could have lifted 3 or 4 more sets after my 12 reps, or sorry, 3 to 4 more reps after my 12 reps. And then in the second set, now you want to leave maybe 2 to 3 reps left in the tank. So maybe the weight is a little bit heavier. You're going to get a little bit overload because of the second set, but you still want to make sure you're bringing that muscle toward fatigue at the end of the set. Then on your final set, the third set, now you want to leave between 0 and 1 or 2 reps left in the tank. This, of course, is going to be a little bit different for everyone, depending on if you're a brand new to fitness or, again, if you're seasoned. And again, so when you get to that 10, 11, 12 reps and you're lifting, you should feel that incredible fatigue in the muscle. It should be challenging for you. It should be at that 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 on that rate of perceived exertion. And when we train in that way, where, the next week we come and we're like, okay, I maybe got a little bit stronger last week. Now, instead of using a 12-pound dumbbell and a 15-pound dumbbell, I'm going to use a 15 and a 20-pound dumbbell. So there's ways to begin to overload the muscle a bit. That's what I'm saying. If you use lighter weights and you're lifting up in that 15 to 20 rep range, the weight's going to be lighter, but you can still bring it toward that fatigue point. And that really is the key. You need to challenge the muscles in a way that it feels challenging for you. So it'll look different for me, who's seasoned. It'll look different for Kim, who's seasoned. But if you're new to weights, very light weights will probably do the trick for a bit until you get stronger, and then you'll need a little bit heavier. I did a coaching call the other day in the membership on this topic, so it's in my brain right now. But we looked at a study where researchers wanted to see how free weight strength training, so dumbbells, affects muscle and strength in women aged 40 to 60. I'm like, brilliant. That's our target audience, right? We're 45 to 65 is our target audience, but of course we have lots of older women and some younger women too. So this study especially looked at the difference between pre and postmenopausal women. So this is interesting. They took 41 healthy women. The average age was 52. I'm 55, so right in there. And they were studied for over 20 weeks. For the first 10 weeks, they did no training because they just wanted to track normal changes. And then the next 10 weeks, they did 2 strength workouts per week using free weights. Okay, just 2 per week. They were split into groups. So they had a low intensity group. These were people lifting at 50% of their max, and then they had a moderate intensity lifting 75% of their max. But they also split the groups by hormonal status. So pre-menopause versus post-menopause. Okay, and here's what they found. All of the women got stronger. Isn't that encouraging, Kim? That no matter what you're doing in terms of resistance training, light, heavy, 2 times a week, 5 times a week, if you go from nothing to something, you're going to get stronger. And I thought that was just really encouraging. All the women got stronger. Their 1 rep max, or how much they could lift for 1 rep, went up. Now, only premenopausal women showed muscle growth or hypertrophy and improved body composition. Well, that sucks. That sucks for the postmenopausal, which I'm in that category. No injuries occurred. Free weights were safe. So here were some of the takeaways here. Strength increases are possible at any age in midlife. Even postmenopausal women got stronger in just 10 weeks. But muscle growth requires more effort after menopause. And this is where the anabolic resistance comes in. Kim gave the definition. We talked about that. This is where the crusty old dry sponge comes in. Okay. So just 6 to 8 sets per muscle group per week may not be enough to build visible muscle. So what amount then works in menopause? Well, Dr. Stu Phillips just did a post the other day, and I loved this. It said, more training equals more gaining. So after he had reviewed a few hundred studies, one of his colleagues, Greg Nuckols, wrote a treatise on training volume and hypertrophy. And here were some of the main points. Higher training volume increases hypertrophy. Remember, hypertrophy is the increase in muscle size. So if you want to have larger muscles, higher training volume increases that. Okay, even beyond 20 sets per week per muscle group. So really, there's no clear max to get additional benefits. Secondly, individual responses do vary. So they do have to put this caveat in. Some grow more with higher volume. So, working out more frequently or longer workouts or more sets per week in a given week on specific muscle groups. Some grow more with high volume, but others don't. Okay. But on average, more volume equaled more gains. So here's the final takeaway. If you want to grow more, specifically in that post-menopausal time, you probably have to do more. Okay. 10 sets per week is fine, but 15 to 20 is even better for some people. So more volume might be the missing piece. If you're like, well, I'm growing in menopause, I'm not seeing any muscle shift, but you're only training twice a week, you probably don't have an adequate amount of volume on the specific muscle group. You probably need more. Remember the anabolic resistance, we're fighting it. So the adaptation needs to be great, or the stimulus rather needs to be greater in order to get the adaptation. So your protein might have to bump up a bit. Your resistance training, that's the number one lever. You got to pull that lever. It won't even matter if you increase your protein, but you don't shift your resistance training. That is the key. So more volume there might give you the adaptation that you desire.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Tracy. I love the fact, as always, that you bring so much science and research into your answers. It's fabulous. Yeah, so I think it's one thing that was striking me as you were talking is how women will often come to us and they will say, well, I'm just a beginner. I don't really know where to start. This volume is scary. What do I do?
Sure.
And I think it's such a great point you made about anything is better than nothing. So yes, we can think that we can have the ambition to build up to doing maybe 3, 4, 5 sessions a week. But if you're starting at the beginning, that's fine. You're still doing something. And I know that one of the things that you do within the membership and also within the programs that you do is you do offer the beginner versions. And often we challenge women. We're like, well, are you really beginner? Do the advanced, but maybe just do half the workout, or do lighter weights and build up to it? And that's a wonderful way to kind of encourage that challenge. But I think it's so important to remember that if you're starting from nowhere, that's still great that you're still doing something. And don't be put off by the fact that you need, in theory, a lot of volume to therefore make those gains postmenopausally, because actually you're on the road to doing it anyway, and that's only going to be beneficial. So I think that's super encouraging. And I was going to mention as well that obviously when we're working out from home, we can quite often get to the point whereby our weights feel too light. Like if we do get a little bit more seasoned and actually we just don't have that capacity of dumbbells. I'm totally one of those. So getting creative about things like the pace that you go at, adding pulses, extra range of motion. I have ankle weights, but I sometimes put them on my wrist to add an extra couple of pounds to to what I'm lifting. So you can most definitely get hints and tips and advice through the membership and similar that can just help you have that little extra edge. That means that then you can just push yourself that little bit more. And I think if we get a bit creative, that can also be really helpful.
Yeah, one thing that you just said there, I just want to reiterate and highlight that if you are just starting out, you are going to see adaptation regardless. Like if you go from nothing to something, it's substantial. It is unbelievable, really, how the body starts to shift and change. So starting out at 2 days a week is wonderful, and starting out with light weights is fabulous, because the goal is always to be able to show up again tomorrow. And if you go hard out of the blocks and you say, I'm going to shift everything, changing my diet, changing my workout routine, I'm going to be here 6 days a week or 7, no rest for me, I'm going, you're just going to fall. You're just going to fall. And then it's going to be frustrating and you're going to get injured possibly. And then we give up. And that is not the goal. Our goal for our movers is to help them do this for the long haul, right? People like us do things like this forever and ever. Amen. And that's what we want for our movers as well. So start light, work your way up, and stay in the pocket. There you go, Kim.
Absolutely.
There's our treaty. That's
I
our
love it. I know,
treaty.
I love it. We need to write it down at some point, like a kind of
We
the Ten
do. We need
Commandments that we live
t-shirts.
daily. We do.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's great. And I think that's why the women, some of the men obviously, but many of the women, of course, appreciate you so much because you have said the same thing for decades and it works. And it is the good science and it is reliable, it's simple, it's straightforward. There's no quick fixes, but
No.
the reality of it works. And it's just listening to you and kind of going, yeah, actually, that's great. I don't have to worry about all this noise that's going on. This is fact, it's science. You're literally we're walking evidence that it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
So are many of our members. And it's just going, you don't need quick fixes and fancy stuff. You just need the
Yeah.
basics because that's where the success lies.
Absolutely. Just the dripping water on the stone that hollows it out, not through force, but through persistence. That's Ovid, not me, but I wish I had written
Yeah.
that.
I know, it's very good.
That's a good one. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. Kim, thanks for your insight and knowledge as always.
My pleasure.
All right. Go move daily now in your fitness, wellness, and nutrition. And we'll see you all in the next Move Daily Talks.